Yilara moved through the crowded space station without making a sound. People walked past her, unaware of her presence. No one saw her. No one ever did. She was a Xetheri, a species known for their advanced cloaking ability. But Yilara was different. Her invisibility was not technology, not a learned skill. She was born this way, completely undetectable to any known species or machine. Even the most advanced scanners could not find her. She had lived like this for years, slipping through the universe unseen. She watched wars begin and end, witnessed secrets exchanged between galactic leaders, and observed civilizations rise and fall. She was a ghost in a universe full of life. Tonight, she was on Eros Station, a busy hub where hundreds of species mingled. Ships arrived and departed every minute. Merchants shouted, travelers rushed past, and security officers scanned the crowds for troublemakers. Yilara walked among them, unseen and unheard, like a shadow that didn't belong. She moved toward the cargo bay, where valuable shipments were stored before being loaded onto transport ships. Yilara wasn't a thief, but she had learned how to survive by taking what she needed: food, medical supplies, and sometimes even information. She took only enough to get by. As she reached for a small supply crate, a sudden shift in the air made her pause. She had developed an instinct over the years, a sense that warned her of danger. She turned her head slightly, scanning the area, though she knew she wouldn't be seen. Nothing seemed out of place. Just workers moving crates, a few travelers checking their bags, and a lone human standing near the docking terminal. Yilara exhaled and stepped forward, reaching for the crate again. But as she did, she brushed against something, or rather someone. A hand. It was just a light touch, barely noticeable, but in that moment, Yilara's entire world changed. The human turned his head sharply, his gaze locking onto the exact spot where she stood. She froze. This was impossible. No one had ever reacted to her presence before. Even if she accidentally touched someone in the past, they always ignored it, assuming it was their imagination. But this human, he didn't look confused. He looked curious. Yilara's heart pounded in her chest. Slowly, she stepped back, her invisible feet making no sound. The human narrowed his eyes, scanning the air as if trying to focus on something just out of reach. "Who's there?" he muttered under his breath. Panic surged through her. She had to leave. Now. Turning swiftly, she moved toward the exit, careful not to make any sudden movements that might create an air disturbance. The human was still watching, his eyes following her even though he couldn't possibly see her. She reached the hallway and hurried through the station, keeping close to the walls. Her mind raced with questions. How? How did he sense me? She had spent her whole life believing she was untouchable, unseen, safe. But tonight, a single human had shattered that illusion with nothing more than a touch. And that terrified her. Nathan Cole stood still, his sharp eyes scanning the empty air in front of him. He had felt it, just for a second. A presence that shouldn't be there. A brush of something warm and solid against his hand. But when he turned, there was nothing. His instincts told him otherwise. Nathan had spent years in the Terran Recon unit, trained to notice what others ignored. A shift in air, a flicker of movement, a sound that didn't belong. These small details had kept him alive on missions where a single mistake meant death. And now, his instincts screamed that something was here, just beyond his vision. He took a slow step forward. Around him, the cargo bay buzzed with life. Workers moving crates, travelers arguing with security, traders checking their shipments. No one else seemed to notice anything strange. Nathan's fingers tingled where he had made contact. It had felt real, human even, but it had disappeared before he could process it. Am I imagining things? No, he didn't believe in coincidences. Casually, he adjusted the settings on his wrist scanner, pretending to check the time. He set it to detect temperature fluctuations. The screen flickered, and for the briefest moment, he saw something. a faint, shifting outline in the shape of a person. Then it was gone. Nathan's breath slowed. His mind sharpened. Something, or someone, is here. He looked around, pretending to lose interest. But his focus remained on the space where he had seen the shape. It was moving away, heading toward the station's main corridor. Nathan followed. Yilara moved swiftly, keeping close to the station walls. Her heart was pounding. This was not good. The human wasn't just guessing. He was tracking her. She had never experienced this before. Even the most advanced species in the galaxy couldn't sense her. But this man, this ordinary human, was different. How? She glanced back, though it was pointless. She was invisible, even to herself. But she could feel him. He wasn't chasing her outright, but he was following, moving with the steady patience of a predator. She needed to lose him. Yilara turned a corner into a quieter section of the station. Dim lights flickered overhead. The noise from the main area faded, replaced by the low hum of power lines and air filtration units. This was a maintenance corridor, narrow, with pipes running along the walls. No cameras. No guards. Perfect. She moved faster, planning to take a sharp turn and double back through another exit. But as she reached the intersection, she stopped. Nathan was already there, leaning casually against the wall. Yilara's stomach dropped. Impossible. He wasn't looking directly at her, but he knew. She could see it in his posture, in the way he tilted his head slightly, listening to the space around him. "I know you're here," Nathan said quietly. She remained silent. "I don't know what you are," he continued, his voice calm. "But I felt you. And now, I can almost see you." Yilara took a slow step back. Nathan shifted, tracking the faint sound. Her mind raced. He couldn't see her fully. Not yet. But if he touched her again. She turned and ran. Nathan pushed off the wall and followed. He wasn't running, but his steps were quick and precise. He had her now. Every small movement she made, every change in air pressure, he was reading it, predicting where she would go. His training had been designed for moments like this, for sensing enemies that didn't want to be found. And whatever this was, she was fast. Nathan took a shortcut through another hallway, calculating her path. He cut through a storage area, jumped over a conveyor belt, and emerged just as she passed. She didn't stop in time. His hand shot out, brushing against something solid. For a split second, he felt her again, warmer than the air, real and alive. A shock ran through him. And then, there she was. A ripple spread through the air, like water disturbed by a stone. The space in front of him shimmered, flickered, and then solidified. A woman stood there. Nathan's breath caught. She had deep violet skin, almost metallic under the dim light. Silver markings ran along her arms, glowing faintly. Her eyes, sharp and golden, were wide with shock. She was tall, lean, dressed in a form-fitting suit designed for movement. And she looked terrified. Nathan took a step back, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "Okay," he said slowly. "Now I definitely see you." Yilara didn't move. For the first time in her life, someone was looking directly at her, and she had no idea what to do. Yilara's breath caught in her throat. This couldn't be happening. For her entire life, she had been unseen, untouchable. She had moved through the universe like a ghost, watching others but never being watched. And now, this human, this ordinary human, was staring right at her. Her golden eyes locked onto his, searching for an answer. How? How could he see her when no other species in the galaxy could? Nathan, still holding his hands up in peace, took a slow step forward. "I don't want to hurt you," he said. His voice was steady, calm. "I just..." Yilara bolted. Her invisibility flickered as she moved, but she didn't stop to think. She just ran. Nathan swore under his breath and sprinted after her. She was fast, faster than any human. But Nathan wasn't slow. His years of training kicked in, his mind calculating the best routes, the shortest paths. He didn't chase in a straight line. Instead, he took sharp turns, leaped over crates, and slid under pipes, cutting off possible escape routes. Yilara wove through the dim corridors of the station, her heart pounding. This wasn't just about running. She had to disappear again. She had to lose him. Her body shimmered, and she turned completely invisible once more. But Nathan still followed. She could hear his footsteps, steady and relentless. She had never met anyone like this before. Most species would have given up by now, confused and lost. But not him. He wasn't using his eyes. He was tracking her through something else. Yilara ducked into a side passage, pressing herself against the cold metal wall. She slowed her breathing, controlling her movements to avoid making a sound. Nathan stopped nearby. The hallway was empty, at least to anyone else. But Nathan wasn't fooled. He turned his head slightly, his sharp eyes scanning the space where she stood. He couldn't see her, but he could sense her. "I know you're there," he said, voice calm. "I don't know how, but I can feel it." Yilara didn't move. Nathan exhaled. "Look, I don't know who you are or why you're here, but I'm not your enemy. I just want to talk." Silence. Then, softly, Yilara finally spoke. "How can you see me?" Nathan blinked. It was the first time he had heard her voice. Smooth, quiet, almost like a whisper on the wind. "I don't know," he admitted. "I don't see you the way I see other things. But I can track you. I can tell when you move, when you breathe. It's like my mind knows something is there, even when my eyes don't." Yilara's fingers curled into fists. No one had ever said something like that to her before. "I don't believe you," she said. Nathan gave a small, almost amused exhale. "Yeah, well, I wouldn't believe it either if I were you." Another silence stretched between them. Then, from somewhere deep in the station, an alarm sounded. Both of them tensed. Yilara's heart sank. Had someone seen her? No, that wasn't possible. But then why? Nathan's wrist device beeped. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. "Security lockdown," he muttered. Station guards just activated high alert mode. Yilara's mind raced. If security was involved, that meant something had triggered their sensors. But she didn't trigger alarms. She never had. Unless. Her eyes snapped to Nathan. "Did you report me?" Nathan looked genuinely surprised. "What? No. I don't even know what you are." But that didn't matter anymore. The station was on high alert, and Yilara was now in real danger. If security forces scanned the area, even her advanced abilities might not be enough to stay hidden. She turned to run, but Nathan's voice stopped her. "You'll never make it out alone." Yilara hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to go. But something about his tone made her pause. "You don't know this station," Nathan continued. "The guards will seal off all exits in less than 3 minutes. Every main corridor will be under surveillance. If you keep running blind, you'll walk straight into a trap." Yilara clenched her jaw. She didn't want to believe him, but something told her he wasn't lying. She could try to escape on her own, or she could trust this human, at least for now. Her golden eyes narrowed. "You help me, and then we go separate ways." Nathan smirked slightly. "Fine by me." He turned and motioned for her to follow. "Come on. I know a way out." Yilara hesitated for only a second before silently falling into step behind him. For the first time in her life, she was trusting someone. And she had no idea if it was a mistake. Yilara followed Nathan through the dimly lit maintenance corridors of the station. Her invisibility flickered, struggling to stabilize. She had never been this unsettled before. She had never needed help. Nathan moved quickly but with purpose. He wasn't just running. He was calculating. He knew exactly where the security teams would go, which routes would be blocked, and where they had the best chance of slipping through unseen. Yilara had to admit she was impressed. They reached a narrow service tunnel, and Nathan crouched near a control panel. "This leads to the lower docks," he whispered. "No cameras, no patrols." He tapped the panel, and the door hissed open. Yilara hesitated. She never relied on others. Trusting someone, especially a human, felt dangerous. But she had no choice. The station was locking down. If she stayed, she would be trapped. She stepped inside. Nathan followed, sealing the door behind them. The tunnel was dark and quiet, the hum of machinery vibrating through the metal walls. Yilara walked a few steps ahead, her invisibility stabilizing again. Nathan exhaled. "So, are you going to tell me what you are?" Yilara stopped but didn't turn. "I am Setheri." Nathan frowned. "Never heard of them." "You wouldn't have," she said. "No one has." Nathan leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You mean your people are all invisible like that?" Yilara hesitated. She had spent her life hiding the truth, but Nathan had already seen what no one else had. There was no point in lying. "No," she admitted. "I am different. My invisibility is not technology. It is part of me." Nathan processed that. "You were born like this." Yilara nodded. Nathan whistled. "That explains why scanners don't pick you up." She turned to face him, still invisible. "And yet you did." Nathan met her gaze, or at least where he thought her gaze was. "Yeah," he said slowly. "And I still don't know why." Silence stretched between them. Then, a sharp beep sounded from Nathan's wrist device. He checked it, and his expression darkened. Security just found something. Yilara tensed. "Me?" "No," Nathan said. "But they know someone is here." They found a heat signature near the cargo bay. It was faint, but it was enough. He looked at her. "They're searching for you." Yilara clenched her fists. This was exactly what she had always feared. She had spent her life being careful, being unseen. But now she was hunted. Nathan studied her carefully. "You need to get off this station." Yilara already knew that, but escaping wasn't so simple anymore. The Exetheri had remained hidden for centuries. If security forces reported this, if they started looking for more like her, her entire species could be exposed. And it all started with one human's touch. Yilara took a slow breath. How long before they checked this sector? Nathan's fingers danced over his wrist device. 15 minutes, maybe less. Yilara's mind raced. She needed a ship, a way out. But even if she got to the docks, there would be guards, checkpoints, scanners. Nathan straightened. "I have an idea." Yilara looked at him warily. "What?" "I can get you through security," he said. "But you have to trust me." Yilara narrowed her eyes. "Why are you helping me?" Nathan shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe I just like mysteries. Maybe I don't like watching people get hunted down." His expression hardened. "And maybe I don't want to be responsible for turning you in." Yilara studied him for a long moment. He was different. Other species feared what they couldn't see. They feared the unknown. But this human, he was curious. And that made him dangerous. Finally, she exhaled. "Fine. What's the plan?" Nathan smirked. "Follow me." Yilara had no idea if she was making the right choice. But at this point, it was her only option. Yilara followed Nathan through the dark tunnel, her movements silent, even though she had agreed to trust him. For now, she kept her guard up. Nathan had seen what no one else could. That made him dangerous. But right now, he was her best chance of escaping the station. As they moved, Nathan glanced at his wrist device. "Security is sweeping the upper levels now. We have maybe 10 minutes before they start locking down the docks." Yilara's golden eyes narrowed. "Then we move faster." Nathan smirked. "Agreed." They reached a junction where the tunnel split in 3 directions. Nathan took the left path without hesitation. Yilara noted how he moved, smooth, controlled, always scanning his surroundings. She had met many species in her travels, but humans had always been unusual. They adapted quickly, their instincts sharp, their curiosity endless. Nathan was no different. As they reached a maintenance hatch, Nathan pulled out a small device and hacked the controls. The door hissed open, revealing a dimly lit storage area. "This leads to Dock Bay 6, Nathan said. "We'll have to pass a few guards, but I have an idea." Yilara remained invisible as she stepped into the storage room. "What idea?" Nathan turned to her, and despite knowing she was invisible, he spoke as if he could still see her. "Ever seen a prisoner transfer before?" Yilara frowned. "What are you saying?" Nathan grinned. "You're my prisoner." Silence. Yilara crossed her arms, though Nathan couldn't see it. "That is a terrible idea." Nathan chuckled. "No, it's a risky idea. Big difference." Yilara didn't like this. She had spent her entire life avoiding capture, staying hidden, and now he wanted her to pretend to be caught. But what other choice did she have? The docks would be crawling with security, scanning everyone. Even if she remained invisible, there was still a chance they could detect a disturbance. Nathan tapped a crate. "There are energy cuffs in here. Non-restrictive, just for show. You pretend to be my prisoner, and I walk us straight through security." Yilara exhaled. "And if they ask questions?" Nathan shrugged. "I'll tell them the truth. I found an unidentified trespasser near the cargo bay, and I'm taking them to a secure holding cell. They'll assume I'm following protocol." Yilara didn't like it, but she didn't have a better plan. Finally, she sighed. "Fine, but if this goes wrong, I am not saving you." Nathan smirked. "Fair deal." A few minutes later, Yilara stood next to Nathan, now visible for the first time in public. Her wrists were locked in fake energy cuffs, a small device on her belt hiding her heat signature to avoid suspicion. Nathan led her out of the storage area and into the docking bay. Yilara's heart pounded. She had spent her life avoiding moments like this, walking in plain sight, being seen. It felt unnatural. 2 station guards spotted them and stepped forward. "Hold it," one of them said, gripping his weapon. "Who's the prisoner?" Nathan kept his posture relaxed. "Caught them sneaking around the cargo bay. No ID, no registration. I was on my way to process them." The second guard narrowed his eyes at Yilara. "What species?" Nathan hesitated, then shrugged. "No idea. Some kind of cloaker. They were hard to pin down, but I got lucky." The guards exchanged glances. Yilara forced herself to remain calm. The first guard turned back to Nathan. "You reported this." Nathan lied without missing a beat. "Didn't have time. Security alerts were already active, and I figured getting them contained was more important." The guard looked at Yilara again, suspicion in his gaze. For a moment, she thought he would call for backup. Then, "Move along," the guard said. "Command will want to interrogate this one." Nathan nodded. "Will do." He gave a slight tug on Yilara's arm, guiding her forward. Yilara resisted the urge to vanish again. They walked past the guards, past the scanners, past the checkpoints, and no one stopped them. As soon as they were out of sight, Nathan exhaled. "Well, that actually worked." Yilara shot him a glare. "You weren't sure." Nathan grinned. "Would you have agreed if I said it was 50-50? Yilara groaned. "I should have left you behind." Nathan tapped his wrist device. "Too late now. We're almost there. I have a ship docked in Bay 12. Once we're on board, we're home free." Yilara hesitated. She hadn't planned on leaving with him. She just wanted to escape. But the way security was searching for her now, she might not get another chance. Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Well, you coming or not?" Yilara looked at the docking bay doors ahead. Her life had always been about hiding, running. But now she was about to step onto a human ship. And for the first time, she had no idea what would happen next. Yilara hesitated for only a moment before following Nathan. Bay 12 was just ahead, and the large docking doors loomed over them like a final barrier between escape and capture. Yilara's heart pounded, but she kept her expression calm. She had spent her life hiding. This was no different. Nathan led the way, walking with purpose. He didn't look around, didn't act suspicious. That was what made him dangerous. He belonged here. No one questioned a man who looked like he had a job to do. They passed another security checkpoint, and Yilara forced herself to keep moving. Her cuffs were still on, but they weren't locked. If she needed to, she could vanish in an instant. Nathan flashed his ID to a dock officer near the entrance. "I'm moving this one to a holding cell on my ship," he said casually. "Captain's orders." The officer barely glanced up. "You're clear." The doors slid open with a hiss. Nathan stepped inside, and Yilara followed. The moment they were through, the doors sealed behind them. Yilara let out a slow breath as they entered the docking bay. Nathan's ship was small but sturdy, a sleek, dark gray vessel with reinforced plating and a streamlined design. It was a human model, built for speed and endurance. Nathan tapped a control panel, and the ship's entrance ramp lowered. "Welcome aboard." Yilara eyed the ship warily. "This is your vessel." Nathan smirked, impressed. Yilara scoffed. "I expected something bigger." Nathan chuckled. "Size isn't everything. Speed matters more." She didn't argue. Right now, speed was their only chance. Nathan led her up the ramp, and the doors sealed behind them. Inside, the ship was compact but efficient. The cockpit was at the front, with a row of control panels and 2 seats. Behind that, a small corridor led to what she assumed were storage rooms and living quarters. Nathan sat in the pilot's seat and began flipping switches. "Hold tight. We're leaving." Yilara stood behind him, watching as the engines hummed to life. She wasn't used to trusting others, especially not a human. But she had to admit, he was capable. The ship's comms crackled. "Docking control to vessel Echo 17. State your departure authorization." Nathan pressed a button. "This is Echo 17. Prisoner transfer protocol. Clearance level C." A pause. "Stand by." Yilara tensed. If they got denied, they were trapped. Then, "Clearance approved. Proceed to exit lane." Nathan grinned. "That's our cue." The ship lifted off the dock, hovering for a moment before smoothly exiting into space. Yilara exhaled. They had done it. She watched the station shrink behind them, the massive structure disappearing into the black void. For the first time, in a long time, she wasn't running. She was gone. Nathan leaned back in his chair. "Well, that was exciting." Yilara crossed her arms. "You lied to security." Nathan grinned. "Technically, I bent the truth." She raised an eyebrow. "And what exactly is your plan now?" Nathan stretched. "Well, I was thinking we celebrate a successful escape, maybe get some food." "I mean after that," Yilara interrupted. Nathan's smile faded slightly. He studied her for a moment before speaking. "I don't know. What do you want to do?" Yilara hesitated. She had spent her whole life with a single purpose: stay hidden, avoid being seen, keep moving. But now, for the first time, she had no plan. She glanced at Nathan. "You helped me, but why?" Nathan shrugged. "I told you. I don't like watching people get hunted down." Yilara searched his face for deception, but there was none. Humans were strange, curious, reckless. But not all of them were cruel. "Finally," she sighed. "I need to disappear." Nathan smirked. "You're already good at that." She rolled her eyes. "I mean for good. The security team saw too much. If they keep looking, they might find more of my kind." Nathan nodded. "So, we need to make sure they stop looking." Yilara tilted her head. "And how do we do that?" Nathan leaned forward, a glint of mischief in his eyes. "I have an idea, but you're not going to like it." Ylara narrowed her eyes. "I already don't like it." Nathan grinned. "Then you'll love this one." For the first time in her life, Ylara wasn't running alone. And for the first time, she wasn't sure where the path would lead. Nathan's ship soared through space, leaving the station far behind. Ylara sat across from him in the small control room, her golden eyes watching him carefully. He had said he had a plan. She wasn't sure if she trusted it. Nathan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "All right. If we want to make sure security stops looking for you, we need to give them a reason to think they already found you." Ylara narrowed her eyes. "Explain." Nathan spun his chair slightly, tapping a few keys on his console. A small holographic screen popped up, displaying security reports from the station. "Right now, they think some unknown cloaked intruder escaped. If we just vanish, they'll keep looking for you." Ylara crossed her arms. "And your solution?" Nathan smirked. "We give them a fake you." Ylara frowned. "A fake?" Nathan pointed at the screen. "Security doesn't know what you really are. They barely got a heat signature. So what if they think they already caught the intruder?" Yalara's expression remained neutral, but she was listening. Nathan continued. "We send a distress signal from an abandoned ship, something nearby. We make it look like that ship had the intruder on board, and when security investigates, they find enough clues to believe they already solved the problem." Ylara tilted her head slightly. "And where do we get an abandoned ship?" Nathan grinned. "Lucky for us, I know a place." A few hours later, Nathan's ship approached a small derelict freighter floating near a dense asteroid field. It was old, broken, and had been drifting for years. "This ship's been here since a pirate skirmish 2 years ago," Nathan explained. "Still intact enough to look real, but dead enough that no one cares." Ylara studied the wreckage through the viewport. "And you're sure security will take the bait?" Nathan nodded. "We're going to make it easy for them. We plant false heat signatures, some damaged cloaking tech, and just enough evidence to suggest the intruder tried to escape here but didn't make it." Ylara considered this. It was a good plan. And it could work. Nathan piloted his ship closer and docked with the derelict freighter. They suited up and entered the cold, silent wreck. The interior was dark, filled with floating debris and broken machinery. Nathan worked quickly, placing a few devices along the corridors. They emitted faint energy signatures, mimicking the presence of cloaking technology. Ylara helped, adjusting the placements. "This should be enough to convince them," she said. "If they believe the intruder was lost in an accident, they'll stop searching." Nathan grinned. "Exactly." After setting up the scene, they returned to the ship. Nathan sent an automated distress beacon from the freighter, making it look like a final emergency signal. Then they left. As they flew away, Ylara watched the wreck vanish into the distance. Nathan leaned back. "Now we wait. Once security picks up the signal and investigates, they'll close the case." Ylara remained silent for a moment before finally saying, "You are surprisingly clever." Nathan smirked. "I'll take that as a compliment." She sighed. "I don't understand you, human." Nathan chuckled. "Most people don't." They sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the ship the only sound. Then Ylara spoke. "What now?" Nathan glanced at her. "That depends. You want me to drop you off somewhere?" Ylara hesitated. She had spent her whole life running, hiding. Now, for the first time, she wasn't sure what came next. Finally, she exhaled. "No, not yet." Nathan grinned. "Then welcome aboard." For the first time in her life, Ylara wasn't just disappearing. She was choosing where to go next. And for now, she chose to stay.